I became a dad at 27 years old. When that little boy came into my world, I wanted to be the best dad possible for him. I told everyone, I'm not trying to raise a good little boy who will do all the things good little boys do. I'm trying to raise a great man who will love Jesus and people. And in my mind, I knew that was a big job, but who better than me for that task? So in my heart, I set aside the next 18 years or so to get that job done. When that kid was in high school, I had an older friend whose child was in their 30s and going through a really tough period. His kid was going against all his values that he and his wife had taught her, and I could see it was just breaking his heart. So I said something to express support to him. I really have no clue what I said, but I remember the words he said back to me. He said, parenting only gets harder as they become adults. It doesn't get easier. I probably nodded my head like I knew what he meant, but in my mind, all the categories in my head exploded, and I tried to think of what he could possibly mean. I wound up having 3 sons, and all of them are now older than I was when my first son was born. And I could not be more proud of the men that they are, and I'm thankful we have growing relationships of friendship. But I've discovered that what my friend said back then was true. So my role today is to speak to the dads who have adult children. Now, think about that phrase, adult children. It's a little bit of an oxymoron. I mean, if you're like me, you discovered that being a parent of an adult is way more complicated than you first realized. And for some of us, it's been like my friend, it's been the most challenging season of parenting that you've ever had. If I had to guess, many of you have adult children who violated your values in every way that you tried to teach them. They have chosen a path that you wouldn't have chosen. And on days like today, you find yourself navigating very complex stories, and you live with mixed emotions about being the parent of an adult child. You go from blaming yourself to blaming your spouse or your ex-spouse to being filled with confusion, shock, and often disappointment. Sometimes, even with God, over promises you feel like He didn't keep. Today, my goal as the old guy speaking is not to try and tell you I know how to fix your problems. It's to give you some encouragement and some hope. But I want to start by saying something to those of you who are just about to enter this stage. You're the dad of someone who just graduated, and soon, if they haven't already, they're going to be telling you in different ways, hey, I'm all grown up now and things have to change. And even though you're going to see things that tell you they're wrong, areas where they still seem to be thinking with a great deal of immaturity, you do need to remember that your role has to change. Nathan and Jason have already taken us down the scale of control and influence, from lots of control and little attempts at influence when they're small to lots of influence, less control as they become teens. You now move into one adult relating to another adult, and you just have influence. So here's my advice to you as you start. Support everything that you can support that they're doing. Even if you don't think it's 100% the best thing, support everything that you can support. Be for them. And on the things that you can't support, if they ask you what you think, you can tell them. But if they don't ask you, you need to keep your mouth shut so you can keep the door open. Will there be things that you see that you know they aren't right? For sure. And if you're asked, you should tell them. But just like you don't open up to every friend and every person at work and everyone in your neighborhood and tell them about the things you see they're doing, that they're wrong, and say, hey, let me tell you something where you're screwing up. You must love your child enough to let them go. If they don't ask, keep your mouth shut so you can keep the door open when they do come to find out why it failed. Some of you might be thinking, but what about the things that are just wrong? What if they're sinful? Well, by the time your child reaches this point in life, they know what you think is really wrong because they've watched you and they've learned and they've listened to you. And if they don't because you didn't do a perfect job when they were younger, well, you can't go back and fix that by trying to treat a 25-year-old or a 40-year-old like they're 15. You will have to treat them like an adult that you want to influence. So keep your mouth shut so they will see that your door is open. The other thing that's really important is be supportive, but don't enable dependency. Your new role of parenting surely involves care and help, but you must be really careful to not enable dependency. I've seen way too many adults who are controlled by their parents' use of money. I can say a lot more about this, but grown-ups pay their own way. They make their own decisions, good and bad. Our job is to let them know that we're for them, but we cannot do their life for them. My whole goal as a dad has been to try and be the best father I could be for my kids. That's still my goal. And I'm guessing my reason is the same as yours. I wanted them to come to know that even though I wouldn't be the perfect parent, they'd come to know through my efforts that we have a really good Father who's in heaven. The further I get into this parenting journey, I see that the way to do that is to adopt Jesus' method. He said, I came not to be served, but to serve and to give my life for you. That doesn't change for me as my kids get older. I still want to say to them, I'm here to serve, not to have you serve me. I believe if we keep that as the big idea, we'll continue to be the dads we want to be, and we'll point our children and our grandchildren to the Father in heaven who's blessed us with the children in the first place.